But I wanted to explore more deeper this idea of science and uh, Christianity or theism as being incompatible. Because I feel like there's a current movement, especially when you watch science programs. I think you brought up Neil deGrasse Tyson a couple of times. There's this sense of when you watch these popular science shows, especially by Neil deGrasse Tyson, where they seemed like everything was in the backwoods until atheistic scientists came on the scene and brought us into this new age of enlightenment and science um, out of nowhere, it seems. And I wanted to explore a little bit about the origins of science in the Western world and of universities in particular as well, and go over a kind of give a step by step overview of how instead of Christianity or theism being anti science, responsible for and has encouraged and developed modern science. So instead of that scientific community coming out of nowhere on its own, they owe a great debt to the church and Christianity in particular for their existence. And so there's a couple of quotes I wanted to bring out um, by Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said, um, I want to put on the table not why 85% of the members of the National Academy of Scientists reject God. I want to know why 15% of them don't. So for him, 85% of the scientists rejecting God is a no brainer. But his great quandary is why 15% are theists. He also says people cited violations of the First Amendment when a New Jersey school teacher asserted that evolution and the Big Bang are not scientific and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs. This case is not about the need for a separation of church and state. It is about a need to separate ignorance, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes here is when asked about what scientists he'd like to meet, Neil deGrasse Tyson said,
Isaac Newton.
"No question, yeah, no question about it. The smartest person who ever walked the face of the earth. The man was connected to the universe in a spooky way. He discovered the laws of motion, the laws of gravity, the laws of optics. Then he turned 26." So those are, I think, a couple of interesting quotes by Neil deGrasse Tyson about what he thinks of religion and religious people. And I think a lot of people have seen his shows on Discovery Channel that he goes throughout the universe and talks about astrophysics and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So he has a lot of influence, I think, in our popular culture regarding science. Um, and I think you see here too, like Isaac Asimov, who's also a scientific writer. I think you
Mhm.
look at
Carl
the guy
Sagan.
that um, the Big Bang, the what's that? The theory of everything guy. What's his name? Stephen Hawking. Those guys are all ardent atheists who look negatively upon the church and specifically Christianity. So I just kind of want to talk to you about what I discovered in my research of this, and kind of get your thoughts on kind of some of the questions that I looked at and kind of some of the ideas I came across as I was investigating this. So my first question to you, Matthew, is: could science have developed from the Greek world? So why did science that we see modern science, I think pretty much in the last, what, 300, 400 years, we see a vast leap forward in science? Why didn't it happen in the Greek world?
Why didn't advanced science happen then?
Yeah. Why we observe the world. The science is about observation, about looking at the world the way it is, and why wouldn't a Greek like Aristotle? I mean, there's some scientists like Ptolemy, who would be like a father of science in that sort of sense, but and like Aristotle. But what do you think? I'm kind of going somewhere here, but uh, when you look at the Greek world, what sort of worldviews would they have that would keep them from um, developing a natural science?
I mean, they kind of did develop a natural science. You look at Aristotle. I mean, he he not only made huge advancements in philosophy, but he also did biological sciences. I mean, he made super detailed drawings of aquatic life and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This sort of inference based on observation and the classification of species and things like that. I mean, that did happen in the Greek world.
But they only got to a certain point. They didn't develop as we have scientifically. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain thing that happened in the last, what, 400 years, that was in the way of like a Greek that would develop natural sciences. And kind of what I'm trying to get at here is they also had a view that there are objects in the universe, like moons and planets and stars, had uh, self-conscious purposes. Is that the moon and the stars and the planets, they moved of their own will.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that they were set in motion, or that they had they had their own agency. So I would say that worldview is kind of counter what we know of modern science's view of the universe, and how things are set in motion and they keep going in motion, and they're not acting on their own will.
Oh,
So
sure.
that I think that's what I think would keep a Greek from taking that next step, when they would divorce the objects, especially in space, and that they would look at them as just created things, not independently um, conscious things.
Okay. So what are you concluding from that? Sorry, I'm not.
I'm concluding from that stalled their development of their scientific development, because they basically were married to a worldview which gave conscious uh, purposes to inanimate objects, or planets and stars and moons and stuff. So they couldn't separate those two realities, and so they would not develop like the law of motion that we see from Newton, or and those people, because they saw those objects as having wills of their own.
You're saying this is the like a popular view among the Greeks? Because I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
I don't know that they all believe that, right? I mean, you have a democracy. Where's Democritus from?
Democritus.
Yeah, he didn't believe in that. He was a materialist.
Well, I'm saying like the overall Greek society in general, the one that birthed uh, philosophy and politics and that sort of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I think that at least from the great philosophers of Greece, that I don't know what would have encumbered them from, if they had time to continue on to develop the natural sciences further. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to do that, given what they believe. I mean, even if they believed, even if Plato and Aristotle believed that the heavenly bodies moved of their own volition, um, I'm not sure why that would preclude them from from future investigation, rejecting that.
Well, I'm just
They
saying
were,
that given that they didn't reject that I would posit that movement towards the modern science that we understand, it was a beginning, but it would be a stillbirth because of those views. kind of hampered their moving in that direction. I'll
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll
I
get you.
mean, okay, go ahead. You can make your
I'll get to
case.
my point. I'll make my case. See
Okay.
what's that. And I would also, because I'm looking at different societies in the world, different cultures.
Hmm.
So from the Greeks, we moved to the east, to the great Chinese civilization, and they also had advancements in science, like they invented paper, and they had a very elaborate calendar, and they had a lot of scientific advancements. But I think they too had a propensity to assign just purposes to heavenly bodies, like you said,
Hmm.
inanimate objects. And so I posit that that's also would constitute a stillbirth in terms of the development of a modern science. I'm not saying there's not elements of um, of scientific beginnings and scientific inclinations, but taking that inclination to the next level in terms of how we view the world and how looking at the world the way it is, which is what science attempts to do. I think that those inclinations were stifled by beliefs and motivations to look at that were and they were stifled by their worldview that um, caused that development to, like I said, have a stillbirth.
Okay. I mean, I'd have to try to see the causal connections there.
Well, I'm saying just like for example, the law of motion. If you look at if you look at heavenly bodies as independent and having conscious uh, purposes, and that's what you believe, that's your foundational belief. You're not going to develop a law of motion because everything just moves on its own will. So there's certain like there's limited there's like maybe you will develop a limited like a very localized law of motion that you think if I roll this boulder down the hill, it'll pick up steam unless it gets stopped by something at the bottom. But if Jupiter is actually a god, Jupiter, he can move and go where he pleases.
Yeah, I
You
don't
don't
know
have
how
to
that
have
would, I don't know how that would preclude you from having a law of motion. I mean, there were agents that move of our own will, right? Animals do that as well in an analogous way. So the fact that some being or any subset of beings in the universe have a will and moved it that way, I'm not sure how that would preclude you from or stillbirth the progression of developing some kind of laws of motion.
I guess I'm looking at like at the broader universal solar system, that sort of thing.
So if you're applying them to you just wouldn't apply them to heavenly bodies then, right?
Okay.
You still develop a law of motion, but then you would say, well, we don't apply that law of motion to, well, maybe you would, but to heavenly bodies. I'm not sure how that would
So you
preclude
say
you from. Go ahead, sorry.
no, I'm saying so. I mean, when you look at like physics and astrophysics and that sort of thing, um, a lot of the observations that were made, like by Galileo and Copernicus and that sort of stuff, and so made by Galileo and those sort of people, if they had a view of those bodies having a will of their own, I don't think they would come. They would even explore that question. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. They might not explore the question of whether or not they are volitional beings, but someone who was interested in exploring that question, I don't know that they would be precluded from making observations and formulating rules or laws and then making predictions about them. I don't know what that would preclude them from doing that. Unless you have some reason for thinking that, I don't know.
I'm just saying, as overall culture, that cultural belief or the underwriting cultural belief,
Mm.
I would posit is a obstacle that they have to overcome in order to get to that next step.
And the next step being,
That they are individual, unique um, bodies that are separate from and do not have their own will, and they move because they're in a system, not that they are like gods out there moving of their own free will. That the universe, that the galaxy.
Yeah. Well, in much the same way that, say, the belief that objects fall at different rates to the Earth based on their size and whatnot, without accounting for, say, like the atmosphere, would be a hindrance to believing that objects fall at the same rate towards the Earth if they don't have any friction, right? Like, it would just be a belief that would have to be overturned through further analysis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And
I'm saying I'm saying it's a foundational obstacle. Is my
okay.
my claim.
Okay.
I'm saying it wouldn't get overcome, but it would have to be overcome later, as we're going to get to. That why it would be overcome.
Honestly, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there were any foundational obstacles to the development of science from the Greeks. I mean, we're speaking of the Greeks broadly, right? Like, different Greeks, they had different views. Let's say from an Aristotelian, Platonic, or Democritus is sometimes. I guess he was in Thrace. He was Thrace 3 times. Thrace, he is sometimes considered the father of modern science, or the founder of scientific thinking. So, yeah, I don't know that I would agree that they wouldn't have developed science if they would have continued along those lines. I'm not sure what would have precluded them from doing that.
Well, they didn't. I mean, they obviously didn't develop modern science.
Well, the Romans came in, right, and took over, and you've got kind of and then you have Christianity taking over after that. There's a lot of historical political movements that took place. You know, the question would be, if the Greeks had time to continue their inquiry, would they have developed modern science? And I don't know. I don't see huge conceptual hurdles that they would need to, or that they couldn't overcome in order to do that.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm saying my thing is that I mean, you say that the Romans came in and that sort of thing, but I'm saying that for my claim, and we don't have to agree on this, but my claim is that those differences, those first principles of how they looked at the universe, I would say wouldn't necessarily lead to, like, say, a law of motion or natural sciences that we understand them today. I don't think that if you assign just independent agency to, like, a planet, that you're going to be able to get to, like, a law of planetary motion. You're not going to arrive there if they have agency of their own. Is my
Why? Point. I mean, because scientific laws are discovered based on observation. So if they think that these things move of their own will, why couldn't they conclude that, wow, they just will to move at the same rate all the time?
I guess they can, but I mean, they'd have to change their view on. And the thing is, their views on gods were, the gods basically had their own. They can do what they want. They didn't have any preset of ideals or what they were bound to. I mean, they basically can do as they please, and that's what their gods did. So
yeah, sure.
I don't necessarily. They're very chaotic in nature. Is what you see from the literature of the Greeks about their gods.
Mm. Yeah,
so
sure.
I would just say. I would just say that. I think it's a hurdle, and to me, it's a fatal flaw. And to you, it can't. Maybe not. But I'm saying this is.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree.
We can disagree. But I'm saying, if you want to challenge me, let's go, man. like we're back in the day in Ames.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I did challenge you already. I don't think that.
Yeah.